From the Evening Standard in London, this is The Leader.
Evening Standard, it's your Evening Standard.
Hi, I'm David Marsland. Who's not getting involved in the UK general election?
We've already had Donald Trump march into Britain's general election when he was interviewed by Nigel Farage, and today it was Hillary Clinton's turn.
Our deputy political editor Nicholas Cecil talks to us about the latest on the election trail, including the Russia report the government won't release. Also,
railways are congested, the road's packed, the M1 is packed, the M40 is packed. So we do need to look at how to sort this out. The plan is HS2, and we say, let's get on with it.
A draft report into HS2's been leaked and says it should go ahead. We say, good. Our Associate Editor Julian Glover explains why. And is it ever okay to eat on public transport? Taken from the Evening Standard's editorial column, this is The Leader. For the whole thing, pick up the newspaper or head to standard.co.uk/comment. Boris Johnson is under mounting pressure over a report on alleged Russian influence in British politics. Hillary Clinton's intervened, criticising the failure to publish it as inexplicable and shameful. Our deputy political editor Nicholas Cecil's in our Westminster office. Nicholas, what is this report and why isn't it being released yet?
Well, today was an interesting day. We've already had Donald Trump march into Britain's general election when he was interviewed by Nigel Farage, and today it was Hillary Clinton's turn, and she was talking about a report by Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee. And the government have refused to publish this report so far, and she has branded that failure to publish the report shameful and inexplicable.
What is the government's reason for that? What's the official line?
Well, the government sent out a cabinet minister called Rishi Sunak, who's a rising star. He did his best to justify not publishing the report, saying that basically is going through the correct Whitehall procedure at the moment to deal with documents which contain sensitive information, and suggesting it needs a couple of more weeks to do this properly. His problem, though, was that Dominic Grieve, who was chairman of the ISC, the committee before Parliament was dissolved, he's completely shot down this explanation. He said that is completely inaccurate, misleading and wrong. So the big question at Westminster really is, what is the government trying to hide here?
It can't be common for both a president and a former presidential candidate to get themselves involved in a UK election, can it? This is all quite weird, isn't it, Nicholas?
Yes, it's most bizarre. And adding to this, there was a cyber attack on the Labour Party yesterday. This is obviously completely unrelated, one would suspect. There's no evidence of any involvement in any foreign state or anything like that. Jeremy Corbyn has described this attack as very serious. My understanding is it was a DDoS attack, which is an attack which basically attempts to overwhelm the computer system by bombarding it with data, so computers grind to a halt or run very slowly. Mr Corbyn is now saying that he feels very nervous about the attack because he believes it's suspicious for such an attack to happen during an election campaign.
Yeah, I can imagine the timing will certainly raise eyebrows, but Labour say they managed to repel this successfully, as I understand it.
Yes, they said they've repelled it, that their defensive mechanisms worked well. The National Cyber Security Centre, which seeks to protect businesses and organisations against these types of attacks, has praised Labour's response, but it's not treating it as a major attack. It's treating it as a low-level incident. It may be a low-level incident, but the timing, it certainly appears suspicious.
And while all this is going on, we have the normal election campaign news happening. And have the Tories and the Brexit Party done a little deal, do you think, Nicholas?
What it looks like is that Nigel Farage has been well and truly kippered by Boris Johnson. Just days ago, he was threatening to field 600 candidates up and down the country, but yesterday he climbed down, and now there are not going to be any Brexit Party candidates in the 300 or so seats that the Tories won in the 2017 election. Has he got anything in return from Boris? It certainly doesn't seem so at the moment. This morning, Mr Farage was calling for the Tories to stand aside in Labour-held seats, which the Conservatives have not won for 100 or so years. But a source close to the Prime Minister has told us we're going to run in all seats. And Mr Farage is now also getting it in the neck from some of his former Brexit Party candidates who are angry that they won't be fighting the election after all. Robert Wheel has branded the situation absolute codswallop. So Mr Farage has been accused of bottling it, and he enjoys a fine lunch, and many people at Westminster expect him to do a second bottle soon by announcing he'll pull out of Labour-held seats which the Tories are more likely to win.
Wow, this is not looking good for the Brexit Party in their first general election, is it?
No, Nigel Farage was all guns blazing, going for it last week. Now he's having to eat humble pie.
Does this make a big difference to Conservative strategy, though? Is it major for Boris Johnson?
It certainly helps Boris Johnson because it means that he doesn't have to devote resources defending lots and lots of Tory seats. If the Brexit Party had won a few thousand votes in a number of Tory seats from into the West Country and the corridor to the West Country, then the Tories could have been losing seats there. Now Mr Johnson doesn't have to worry so much about that. He can concentrate his firepower on trying to win Labour seats, which he needs to do to gain an overall majority.
Next.
Lots of people know that West Coast Main Line well. Bits of it, they're not even Victorian. They were built before Queen Victoria became Queen, and yet we can't expect those to carry traffic for the next 200 years.
A report into the future of HS2 has been released and appears to have given the high-speed rail line the green light. This is sound taken from the construction site for part of the HS2 project, recorded in Buckinghamshire in August. There wasn't a lot going on. Can you hear the crickets? HS2 has been infamously delayed. We're not likely to see the first phase until 2031. It was also around £30 billion over budget, which is why the government launched a review to ask if it's worth going ahead with at all. The findings have been leaked. Here's what we think of what they have to say.
The leaked draft confirms the project should go ahead in full. Good. That's the right answer. The alternatives, chopping bits off to save cash, or stopping altogether, would be a betrayal of the Midlands and the North, and would show that parties were giving up on trying to reduce inequalities between North and South. The scandal isn't that the line is going ahead, but that it is taking so long to arrive. It's now more than a decade since the idea was backed by government, and 6 years since the Commons voted overwhelmingly for it in legislation. Put it another way, from start to opening, building even the first part of HS2 will take about 3 times as long as fighting the Second World War. This is the moment for us to stop going on about whether it should happen and instead make sure it is done well. We need HS2, we need to get on with it, and it will make our country stronger and richer.
Associate Editor Julian Glover. HS2 has been stuck at a red signal for a really long time now. It looks like it's going to get permission to go. Will it be worth the wait?
It will. And we'll probably get it. As we find out today, there's a big report being done by experts for the government. And when you hear the words, a big report is being done by experts for the government, you've got to ask, why did they commission it? And in this case, it's quite clear they commissioned it to bridge the election, to get away from having to answer the question, are they really going to go ahead with HS2? Well, a leaked copy of the report has been cited, and it appears to be correct, and it shows the government wants to go ahead, and it advises the government this is a good project, we need it, we ought to get on with it. And in the Evening Standard, we say that's right.
Why do we say that's right?
Because we've been talking about this project for a decade now, and there's some basic facts. The main routes north of London are full, railways are congested, the roads packed, the M1 is packed, the M40 is packed, our cities are growing, we need to balance our economy, we need to support places outside London, make sure they have just as good as transport as other cities across the world get these days. The railway out of Euston Station, lots of people know that West Coast Main Line well. Bits of it, they're not even Victorian. They were built before Queen Victoria became Queen, and yet we can't expect those to carry traffic for the next 200 years. So we do need to look at how to sort this out. Been a lot of effort to do that. The plan is HS2, and we say let's get on with it, as this report by experts says as well.
There have been lots of kind of variations on what HS2 could actually look like, but it looks like they've ruled out not stopping it at Euston. That's actually going to happen now, isn't it? Or it's been, as far as a draft report or a leaked draft report can go, that seems to be confirmed.
Yeah, the very worst thing to do, and maybe it's quite a British way of doing things, would be to commission a massive project as the costs go up, because things are difficult and big and expensive to build. As the costs go up, you chop bits off until it becomes useless, but you can't admit at that point it's useless, so you go ahead anyway, and you build a sort of railway between the edge of London and the edge of somewhere else that isn't any use to anyone. That would be completely crazy. If you're going to get to that point, it's better not to do it at all. It looks like this report has seen sense, and it will say the trains need to go to central London because that's where people want to go. But they'll stop as well on the way in. They'll stop at Old Oak Common, not very famous at the moment, but one day it will be. It'll be on Crossrail when that opens. Another late project. Lessons to learn from Crossrail about how to get HS2 right. Not everything's perfect, but giving up, completely crazy. Getting it right, very good idea.
Now, a city worker has been fined £750 after launching an aggressive tirade at a fellow commuter who was eating boiled eggs on a train to London. Samantha Mead was found guilty of intentionally causing harassment, alarm or distress to Erica Stota, and also ordered to pay £750 in compensation. Our editorial column is intrigued by the story.
There has been a scrap on a train because someone was upset by the smell of a fellow passenger eating eggs at 6 a.m. Nothing justifies aggressive behaviour, but who hasn't felt quiet fury when the traveller next to you starts munching a burger or chomps through a packet of salt and vinegar crisps, or when the smell of kebabs floats down the carriage? Our advice? Keep the food for later and stick to reading the Evening Standard.
Or listen to the podcast. We're here every day at 4 p.m. with all the latest opinion and analysis. We also have a news bulletin for smart speakers that you can hear every morning from 7 a.m. Just ask for the news from the Evening Standard.